Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between. Hi, welcome back to Becoming Sound. I'm Krista, and today is part 2 of my conversation with registered psychologist Kim Long, where we dive into complex PTSD and how it affects us emotionally and physiologically. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go back to last week's episode and have a listen. And if you have, then let's get started. I want to talk a little bit about complex PTSD. When you have someone coming from abuse or addiction and you're a child trying to survive in that, you're building all of these coping mechanisms, these survival skills, and that becomes complex. And so what are some of the signs and symptoms so people would know that they're kind of in that, or they have those patterns, they have those behaviors?
So PTSD encompasses a change in our thoughts and a change in our behaviors. It encompasses anxiety and depression. So some of the things that you'd be looking for are that hypervigilance that you were talking about, where you're easily startled, where maybe it's hard to sleep, where you start believing that the world is unsafe, no one can be trusted. You start to withdraw, or maybe you, like from activities that you used to enjoy, you have a hard time enjoying things. Maybe you don't notice that you have this breadth of emotion anymore, where it's just, I feel sad or angry and that's it. So all of those kind of fall into it. Flashbacks is another one where sometimes you'll get intrusive memories. They just pop up and you kind of freeze in that moment. Also like an emotional detachment. I mean, there's so many little signs that overlap with other diagnoses that we have to be really careful about. When is it PTSD and when is it something else, right? But really, you're going to notice issues with sleep, issues with thinking, issues with concentration, issues with being easily startled. And you might only notice some of those or all of them. Everybody's presentation is different. So yeah, those would be some of the things that I would be looking for, is like a general numbness. Dissociation is another thing. So dissociation is where, like, if you've ever been driving to a familiar place and you get there and you're like, I don't even remember the drive. That's dissociation. And we all do that to a certain extent, right? But it's basically where you check out or where you feel like you're in this dreamlike state. That can be common with people with PTSD because they're kind of bebopping between being hyper-regulated, so super anxious, angry, to under-regulated, which is depression and the numbness, and they can't do anything. And so there's this thing called our window of tolerance. So think of it like a thermometer. And you've got 0 to 10. 0 to 2 is under-regulated. That's the depression and numbness. Your window, if it's a healthy window, is usually like 4 to 7. And there you're thinking, you're online, you're able to function really well. And then anything at 8 or above is hyper-regulation. So the anxiety, the rage, the lashing out. Too low is not great and too high is not great. For people with PTSD or people who have experienced complex PTSD or repetitive wounding over time, layers of it, it's like your window, it has been almost closed. And so your only choice as your system tries to get you back in that comfort zone is it keeps flooding you with chemicals and you keep bebopping between super regulated and under-regulated. And by the time you're almost back in that window, something else happens and you're bebopping again. So that's what complex PTSD is like, is very rarely are people in where they feel good. That's like a blip. Sorry, long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's a great explanation, because I honestly, if I would have had that probably 15 years ago, that would have been helpful to me, to understand the spectrum and the up and downs kind of thing, and not being able to find that exactly, that window really narrows. It's like you have, you can be happy, but it's so short-lived because the hypervigilance just sends you right back up into cortisol, right? So I completely understand that.
This idea that, well, I can make myself happy. No, you've got to remember, you're also competing against the chemicals in your system that are released upon a perception of threat. And so the system tries to release chemicals to counteract that, to bring you back into your window, but it ends up overshooting the window because it's so narrow. So there's also this chemical reaction that we don't have control over.
No, not at all.
So, it's a lot of learning ways to open your window so that the chemicals have a chance to get you back in the window in a way that can be sustained.
Exactly. Yeah. So what kind of modalities do you guys use to help people with that?
So we do use, of course, self-regulation at first to make sure that people can manage the trauma work without it significantly dysregulating them.
Okay.
So we try to open their window a little bit. And then we use things like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's the really weird one where someone's waving their hand in front of your face or tapping you. It's really effective. My clients call it witchcraft, but it's the research is really there to support it. Some of my clinicians focus on like cognitive behavioral therapy to work on those negative thoughts about self and world, those perceptions. Like I said, I'm leaning into IFS, which is the parts work and helping the managers find another role in the system. Also, emotion-focused individual therapy and emotion-focused therapy for couples work can be amazing because you're trying to provide that corrective emotional experience that the person didn't have when they were in that vulnerable state. So they learn that they can heal themselves. Which can be absolutely beautiful. So there's so many different modalities depending on the clinician and what they believe about how people change. I believe people change if you can help them have the corrective emotional experience. So that's why I use EMDR, EFIT, and IFS typically.
What's EFIT?
Oh, sorry, emotion-focused individual therapy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, for people to understand that reaching out for help is, not a weakness, it is a strength, and that we weren't meant to do this alone for sure. It's probably the biggest epiphany I've had in my life is that it's okay to ask for help. Like, it is okay.
And we have to.
Yeah.
So this is the thing with our world right now and why I think luckily we're talking about mental health more, but our world doesn't support mental health because what you're talking about is attachment, right? We are biologically hardwired to have meaningful emotional connection. There was this cool, well, not cool for the monkeys, but this cool experiment kind of done where some monkeys were rescued from a place where they were given food and water or the necessities to survive, but they weren't given any affection. And when the rescuers came, the monkeys still wouldn't eat. And then when they gave them love and affection, the monkeys started to eat again. Right? Or if you have monkeys that have a choice between a soft, plushy figure that gives no food versus just a wire figure that gives food, they go to the soft one. We are hardwired to connect in an emotional, loving way. And if we don't have that, that creates trauma.
Yeah.
Because we're scared in our world. We feel disconnected. Well, look at our world right now.
I know.
My bias, but so we're perpetuating it.
Yeah. It's so true. It's not really a bias. I mean, it's reality. Right? Our world is, you're right. There's a lot of talk about it, but it's not set up that way for us to thrive. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's where therapy can come in is we sometimes become those attachment figures for a short while until the client can either become their own attachment figure or learn how to healthily attach to others.
Yes. Yeah.
And the key word there is healthily attached to others, right? But what you're talking about is attachment. And without that, none of our theories work.
No, exactly. And that was beautifully said. Like, you need someone to be that
Mhm.
person for you. And
Mhm.
a therapist is the perfect person to help you get to that state where you can reach out to other people
Mhm.
and have
Mhm.
healthy communication and relationships and have that loving person by your side, you know? Yeah, we
Yeah.
all
And
need
that's
that.
why I'd encourage people to shop around for a
Hmm.
therapist too. You know, you get to decide what you tell your therapist in the first
Yeah.
session. And if you're not feeling the vibe, find another therapist because it
Oh,
is about the connection and the fit. So
it
much of it
is
is that.
100%. And if you're
Yeah.
sitting in a seat with the wrong therapist,
Yeah.
it's just like spinning your wheels, you
Yeah.
know, because the trust factor has to be there, that comfort level. I've had a few therapists and, you know, a couple didn't work at first is because I just
Mhm.
felt like I couldn't express myself. I didn't feel
Yeah.
100% safe. And that wasn't all on the therapist, but there was
Right.
that connection piece was missing.
In those situations, and I don't know how long you continued seeing those therapists, but in those situations, did you end up repeating old patterns of behaving then, or were you
Um,
conscious of it?
the first therapist I had, yeah, I found that I just was holding back so much. I had like a vault around me for sure. Like
Mm.
I was a hard case to crack kind of thing. I was,
Yeah.
um, but the last therapist I had, it was great. I found that I was a lot more trusting, and I had done
Yeah.
some other modalities too. I had started to do more healing modalities, so I felt more
Mm.
relaxed in my body. And so
Mhm.
I was slowly getting to a place where that window was opening a bit and I could trust a bit more, right? Myself
Yeah.
and another person. There's definitely a place for therapy for sure. And I think if you get fitted with a person that you
Mhm.
really resonate with, you know,
Yeah.
you can really make improvements and the changes that you want in your life. So it's super important to, just like you said,
Yeah.
you have a choice. Make sure that you're a good fit, you know,
Well,
and
and I want to touch on something you said about some of your healing came from the body. So we
mhm,
do have a practitioner here who works with somatic experiencing,
mhm,
which is another modality, great for
yep,
trauma, and it really focuses on the body, you know, which I love. Like we have these three brains. We have our thinking brain, our emotion brain, and our body brain, and
yep,
it makes up the system. They all
yep,
work together.
mhm.
In my opinion. But and there was something else you said that I was like, that's so important. So many things. Oh, yes, your vault. I'm
Oh, yes.
curious because I have clients that, especially because I work with veterans who come
Mhm.
with that vault,
Yeah.
right? And you shall not pass. So what was it for you that if you feel comfortable
Oh,
sharing,
yeah.
that kind of was the shift to unlock the vault and kind of peek? You know, not throw the
Yeah.
door wide open, but just maybe.
You know what? I was 39 when I first started opening myself up to the healing world. And once I was like, oh, there is solutions to what there's stuff that will help me, I just kind of opened the doors. And I'm a chronic researcher and a chronic
Okay, yeah.
self-help. Honestly, I wasn't as open up until a couple of years ago. My son went through a long addiction. And as a parent, I found that a lot of stuff come up for me in a big way when he was
Mhm.
in going through his addiction. I became severely codependent. I was in denial. I felt like all that work I had done up until that point, just
Mhm.
literally I flushed it down the toilet. I
Oh,
didn't. I realize that now, but
yeah.
that's
Okay,
how I
good.
felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I was really in this bubble, it's like I wanted to save him so
Yeah.
badly and protect him. The mother instinct in me was just off the charts. And yet I wasn't doing what he needed. I was trying to protect him indirectly. I was trying to save myself. And it was just getting out of control. And we ended up doing an intervention with him. And I had literally had it like it was a breaking point for me. And I knew in that moment, A, I had to save him because he was dying. Two, I was so sick of living in this shame and guilt and this secrecy and silence, not just his stuff, my own
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
that broke me open. It was shortly after he went into recovery that I saw a therapist. She was a nurse originally, and she ended up doing like Reiki, and she does body work and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I go to see her, and after a couple sessions, she just knew intuitively. She's like, wow. And she's the one that said it. She's like, you've got like a bank vault around you. Like, you're so tight, you're so tense, and you can talk all you want, but your body's showing me a different story. And so it was in about our second or third session, and she's doing some body work on me. And she said, I just want you to put your face in the pillow, and I just want you to let it out. Like, you are safe here. Like, just scream it out. Whatever you got, you're just holding it in. And I got to that point where I was like, I can do this. I'm talking to myself through it,
Yeah.
I'm in my head a lot.
Go in that way. Yeah.
It is. It's really hard to let go. But, I had done other modalities of therapy and never cry. Like, just hold it in, appear to have everything under control. Yeah. And so in that moment, she's pushing on my glutes, which hurt like hell.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was screaming from the pain or screaming from the emotion. And I know it was a lot of both. Yeah. But it's like the floodgate opened up and something come out. And I felt like this weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. But it literally was like cracking this barrier. I was holding it all right here. I could feel it. And after, I felt like my voice opened up. Like, I stopped having this pain in my chest, in my throat. And all of a sudden, I found a voice for myself. And, when people would ask me about what was going on in our family, I told my son, I said, your story is your story. I will never tell that. But I have a story here too. And so people would ask me, I'd be completely honest. I'm like, there's no more secrets, because addiction thrives in secrecy. It thrives in the silence, and it thrives in just keeping it all bottled up. And so I would just be honest. I realize that everything I went through in my childhood, this whole culmination of things have come to a head. And now I'm just going to speak my truth. I don't know what brought the breaking point on. I think I had just had enough. I think something inside me said, it's enough already. Like, it's okay to be not okay. And I understand what you're saying, like what you're asking about, like when you have veterans and people who have suffered immense PTSD, like big traumatic events, and they're just closed up like a vault. And I don't know, I think to face that fear, right? Like, I think the fear was the biggest thing. What I was afraid of, I have no idea. Rejection, judgment, the whole gamut.
And I mean, you brought up the secrecy part, right? Like, there's a shame that goes, with different professions as well. Like in the military, you're not allowed to be quote unquote weak, which that word, man, if I could eliminate a word. But anyway.
No kidding.
But shame thrives on secrecy. Like when you were talking about, the secrecy and how that just festers, it made me think of like yeast growing. It just bubbles and festers, and if you don't deal with it, it becomes like gangrene, right? Yeah. But everybody works on that in their own time frame, and you just have to be patient. But it is that like safe environment, and it sounds like it was trust in yourself too, that I got this. I can do this. Yeah. You also brought up a point that for many people that are researchers, which I am also one of them, we tend to be really good at intellectualizing our problems.
Oh, yes.
Right? Like, I could go to therapy before. I don't know how Marianne, my previous therapist, dealt with me, but I could go to my therapy before and reason it out like crazy, but I wasn't feeling it. And until I think that that's why now I practice from looking at that emotion space, because it wasn't until I started to allow myself to feel and notice the feelings. Once I did that, I started to move in my therapy. But when I stay in my like, that's another sign for me. So you were asking signs before, right? If you stay in that controlled research like state about your stuff that's going on, that's a sign you're not coping okay.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's one of my red flags is, when I am over intellectualizing, I'm actually not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's so unbelievably true. And I realized that about myself too. The moment I allowed myself to feel, it's like I came back to myself, my body.
Yes.
I came back into this whole being instead of being the parts, the separated parts.
Yeah.
And
the neck up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I used to be able to tell my story like I was reading off the 6 o'clock news from a teleprompter, you know? It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think you can get stuck in that, and then you forget that your emotional house needs you, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing
Oh,
that
you're welcome.
story
Thanks
with
for
me. I know we've
asking.
just met, but I think that that's so powerful. And I love that
Yeah.
you told your son, I have a story too.
Yeah.
Like, I'll
Yeah.
respect you,
Mm-hmm.
and I also need this for me. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
And
that's
he
pretty
was
cool.
inspiring for me too. You know, I watched him go through recovery, and I was like, wow, it's like meeting your adult son for the first time, you know, because he had been in that
Must have been
addiction for a
so
long
cool.
time.
Yeah.
And it was pretty powerful. And I thought, wow, if I can watch this young man do this, I can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's never too late for people to. And sometimes people think that, you know, well, I've been this way my whole life, so why change now? Or this is just the way it is. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
You know what? We have senior clients that come here, and it's their first time coming, and they love it. And like, we love seeing them because it's such again, I go back to, it's just such a gift that after all this time, they're trusting us with their story, and that they believe, hey, my life can be even better. I'm like, good for you.
I know.
Go.
Isn't it?
I get so excited.
Exactly. Yeah. It's never too late to grow and just learn and trust yourself. So,
well, congratulations to your son.
Oh, thank you. Yes, he's doing very well. And he just had a baby here a couple months ago. So he's doing amazing.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
So I saw on your website that you have an app called the Life Jacket. Do you want to tell us what that is and how it is helping people?
Sure. The life jacket is to kind of keep us from drowning. So it's not meant to be used every day. It's more meant to be used when your window has shut and you aren't thinking properly, right?
Right.
So it holds all those strategies that might be helpful to you in those moments where you can't lose your stuff because it's not a safe space. So you need to bring it back down a little bit. So when you go into the Life Jacket app, it asks you how your mind is doing, how you're feeling, and how your body feels. And then it also asks an additional question about what sense is your strongest. And the reason why it does that is because our 5 senses are strongly connected to our emotion brain. And so if you know what, like, my strongest modality is touch. So in my offices, there's like all different types of fabrics and textures that I can touch and stroke when I'm not doing okay. And I can just pay attention to it in that moment. So what the app does is it sorts through all the strategies that we've uploaded, and it'll give you a list relating to your strongest sense, or it's supposed to. And then you can like heart them and save them for you to go back to later. And it also connects to our website if you need to book with somebody because you're struggling repeatedly. But it's meant to be used in those moments where it's like, I'm not okay and I need to still cope. So
yeah. And where can people find it?
It's on our website, I believe, and I believe it's in the Apple Store and Google Play Store, and it's just the Dochas Life Jacket, and it's free, and it will stay free. We have no plans to monetize it at all.
Awesome.
Because we just want people to have something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just a tool. And I mean, everyone's got a phone nowadays. So if that's like your lifeline, right? Like if you need help in the moment. Yeah. That's awesome.
And the cool thing is too, is if it gives you a list of strategies that you don't like, you just swipe back.
Okay.
And go through the process again until it gives you strategies that you're like, yeah, that one feels right. And so it almost helps bring you back in that window anyway, because it's forcing you into that frontal lobe because you're thinking as you're answering. So it's multifaceted that way.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. And you also have something called Hub for Hope. What is that about?
So We are also an educational facility. So we have interns at our office, and we wanted to find a way where people who cannot financially afford therapy for whatever reason have access to elite care. So through our internship program, we're able to offer 8 sessions for free. And if things are going really well between you and your therapist and you're finding gains, then you can get additional sessions for free. So that way it's for those people that really need it and just can't afford it for whatever reason. My colleague Rachel has been working really hard on the Dochas Resilience Foundation, which is our charity, and Hub for Hope will be housed through that. And we're hoping to be able to expand on that program in the near future, because there's so many people, especially in this day and age, that insurance just doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's
and
awesome.
when you have to choose between groceries and your mental health, I just don't think that's fair.
No kidding. Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad you're doing that. I come across a lot of people that are like, well, I'd love a therapist, but I can't afford that. Like exactly that. It's like, do I choose between getting my mental health in a better state or groceries, you know?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it isn't always accessible to everybody. So that's awesome. And I will post all of that in the show notes so people can find all that. And that's great. So anything you got going on right now that you want to promote, or anything else you want to talk about?
Well, we always have a lot going on, which when I reflect on it, it always surprises me. But there are a number of initiatives that are starting in Spruce Grove with the FCSS and the Community Social Services. Community Social Services in Spruce Grove has been wonderful. They're going to be starting a teen center soon, I guess.
Nice.
Which is super exciting. We're going to be helping out with the teen center in Stoney, it seems. So that's Stony Plain for anyone that doesn't know. And yeah, we just love being involved with our community. So we definitely have more of those things on the horizon. And then I have a number of practitioners that are transitioning from mental health therapists, which is kind of our middle ground to try to offer more affordable therapy, but they're transitioning into becoming registered psychologists.
Nice.
So it's an exciting time here where everybody's changing, growing, and we just
awesome.
Our focus is on offering elite client care to everyone.
Yeah.
So we're really honing in on that next year.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. That's great. And I love that you have therapy dogs there. Just for anyone. I've been to a therapist who had a therapy dog, and I'll tell you, if you're nervous or if you get anxious, the therapy dog is amazing. They're so comforting. It's like it immediately brings your cortisol levels down, makes you feel comfortable. Yeah.
It's so amazing. I'm lucky. My dogs are not fully therapy dogs yet. We're still working on it. Mulligan believes she has to French kiss everybody, and I'm like, that's inappropriate. Don't do that. But she has an affinity for the men. Surprise, surprise. She'll literally, if they're dysregulated, she'll try to climb up in their lap. And she's a German Shepherd size. So that's funny. And then Cooper is my old soul, and he'll just lay on your feet. If you're a woman, he can tell that you're dysregulated, and he'll just lay on your feet. But my clients will just pet them, and now they come in and they'll go, well, where are the dogs today? I'm like, what am I, chopped liver? Like, I'm right here. And we have a number of clients that have their own service animals. And so there's almost always a service animal or a dog on site, which
that's amazing. I love it. Unbelievable how animals know, right? They're so intuitive. Know. It's crazy. Yeah. I went to a retreat and they had therapy horses there. And the horses just instinctively know. It's like they read your energy right away, and they'll tell you through their body language and their ear movements. So that's
Although
awesome.
I have had clients say to my dogs, what are you doing, outing me now? I thought I had her convinced that I was okay. And I'm like, no, they ratted you out.
Exactly. They have their little notepads. They're like, we see you.
Nice try.
Exactly.
Although sometimes the service animals rat me out. So like if I'm with a client and I'm feeling into what they're experiencing, sometimes the their service dogs will come over and sit in front of me, and I'm like, stop doing.
Yeah.
Just feeling like you're go to your person.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's cute.
So
That's
funny.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I have loved it.
About your experiences too, because that's connection, and we learn from
it's like
each other.
having free therapy today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well,
every conversation I have is like free therapy for me.
Well,
I don't tell everybody that, but I'm telling you right now it is.
It's all good. It's all good. I mean, I learned a lot from you about different ways to unlock vaults and different approaches. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim. Absolutely my pleasure. And I hope to have you on again.
Oh, that would be awesome. And take care of yourself.
Thanks. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.